Am I the for refusing to raise my husband's children from his affair now that he and the woman he cheated with have passed away? Sorry for using a new account. I know that's a red flag, but I don't want to risk using my old Reddit account. My 45F husband, 49M, of 23 years has been having an affair with a 20-year-old girl since 2020. I found out this year when his affair partner gave birth to twin boys in March. Obviously, we were going to divorce. We've been hashing things out since. It's been a lengthy process due to some properties in common, and we needed to get an accountant since he used the shared account for his affair. Finally, things seemed to be getting close to the end when both my husband and the woman he cheated with were killed in a car crash. By some miracle, the twin babies were not harmed in the crash. Now they are orphaned, and neither set of grandparents can take them in permanently. My husband's parents are both in assisted living. He has no siblings, and the only aunt that could take them refuses. She's been child-free her whole life. On the woman's side, I'm not sure of the details in full, but her parents are also not able to be involved long-term, and the one sister she has lives overseas. Since we were still married and he had not updated his will, all his assets are set to pass to me and our 2 children. I'm not callous enough to leave those babies with nothing, so I agreed to let whoever is their legal guardian have the remaining balance in the shared account, about $25,000 in savings. The issue is, no one wants to take them in. Now my in-laws are pressuring me to take them in and raise them. The issue is, I don't want to at all. I wouldn't love them, and I don't want to be the evil stepmother, but I know a big part of me will always have a level of resentment towards them. I will probably favor my own children. It's not their fault, but I truly loved my husband, and I thought we were happy before I found out about the affair. We have 2 daughters, 14 and 16. Obviously, we had disagreements but never insulted each other before. Then I found out about the affair, and he began calling me names and blaming me for his cheating. He became abusive and even tried to kick me out of the house, my childhood home. That is not shared property, for the record. I'm also raising teenagers alone now. I don't have the energy to raise babies anymore. My daughters hate their baby brothers. I tried to get them to spend time with their dad as we were divorcing, but they refused. Since this all was found out because of the babies, there wasn't really a way to sugarcoat the situation, and they are also too old to really get away with it. Most of my friends agree it's not my place to care for those children, but my in-laws, the affair woman's parents, and my mother want me to raise them. I know my mom is just having grandkid fever, but it hurts to not have her support. I have to make a decision by next week, or the boys will be going into foster care. At the moment, they are temporarily placed with their maternal grandparents. I feel horrible, but I am very sure I can't take them in. Small update. Hey everyone. This blew up far more than I thought, and I appreciate the well wishes for my girls, the boys, and myself. Also, for the amount of lovely people offering to see about giving the twins a good home. I might not be their mother, but it does touch me and makes me glad there's good people out there. After thinking carefully, speaking to my lawyer, reading responses, doing research, etc., I plan to speak to the grandparents tomorrow and refuse to take legal guardianship of the boys. I will let them know the usernames of people that offered meetings for private adoptions or fostering, but my daughters are my priority. It'll be up to the twins' grandparents to decide if they'll proceed with adoption, keep them, or turn them to the state. I wish I had the mental capacity to be the person to do this, but I have 2 girls that are going through a lot, and they need my full attention. I'll also be talking to the lawyers to figure out if the boys have any inheritance claimed properly. If they do, I'll separate it and leave it to the lawyers to do what they need to do for them to have access when it's best. If they don't, I'll find a way to ensure they have access to the $25,000 I was going to give them since the beginning. I won't do more, however. My moral compass might be biased, but I don't believe I'm obligated, either morally nor legally, to do more than what the word of law says. I can't help everyone, and I shouldn't have to. I have 2 girls that lost their father, 2 girls that need therapy, 2 girls just about to get to college. They've gone through enough without seeing their mother favor the children of their father's mistress. Now to the next story. Story 2. My stepmother abused my fiancé's young brother, causing a family rift that threatens to destroy our wedding and relationships forever. Original post, mention of child Abu*e. It's not too graphic, but it's there. I tried posting this through a different account a couple of days ago, but it didn't work out. Given the trigger warning, I'm not surprised. I have since concluded my wife and I did the right thing, so this will be my last attempt to post this story. I tried to add some info and change the wording a little. All names are fake. My 28M stepmother, 49F, is a wannabe party planner. She has taken it upon herself to plan and host every party and holiday my dad's family has thrown since she married him. I never loved those occasions growing up. She's controlling and gets upset if people complain about anything, but we humored her for my dad's sake. According to him, this helps her feel included. I'm getting married to my fiancée, Jane, 26F, in July. We got engaged in early 2021, but Jane ended up getting pregnant a couple of months after that, and we decided to postpone the wedding to focus on our son for a while. So we've had a long engagement. My stepmother has tried to hijack our wedding plans from day one, complaining, contacting our planner, showing up unannounced to Jane's dress appointments, etc., and we have repeatedly asked her to stop. My dad wants us to humor her, but she's clearly resentful of the fact that she's not hosting the wedding or being labeled mother of the groom in invitations. Besides our baby boy, we also have Luke, 4M, Jane's paternal half-brother. She got custody of him a few months into our relationship after his parents died. I ended up moving in with them during the pandemic and have been in Luke's life since he was a baby. He doesn't call me Dad and refers to us as his sister and his OP, but we love him like a son. Stepmother, though, hates Luke. She accuses Jane of baby-trapping her way into the family. That accusation only got worse after our son was born. My dad gets along with Jane and adores the kids, but stepmother demands him to refuse babysitting Luke so we don't leave the kids with them often. Instead, Jane's brother and CL usually watch the kids for us, as their children are close to ours in age. We had a thing last Sunday, and my BIL was out of town with his family. Jane's other siblings live in different cities, as well as my mom and sister. My dad agreed to babysit at our place, and we left. We came back to find both kids crying, stepmother screaming, and Dad weakly trying to calm everyone down. Apparently, Luke had told stepmother that both he and our son were going to be our ring bearers, and she went ballistic. She screamed that she wasn't going to allow that because he wasn't family. She then made me need to include the trigger warning. When he started crying, his lip was still split. She'd never gotten to this point before. We immediately banned her from our house and from our wedding. Dad is fuming and has said he's not going without her. He's also convinced half of his side of the family, by severely downplaying what stepmother did, to boycott the wedding as well. This includes my stepbrother, who fully agrees with his mother, no matter how many times I try to tell him the truth. Me and Jane are refusing to budge, but many of my cousins, who aren't coming anymore, are asking us to reconsider. Pretty much all of Jane's family agrees with us, but one of her aunts has suggested that maybe stepmother is acting out because she doesn't feel welcomed by my family. I've honestly had it with my family enabling her behavior. I love my dad and really want him at my wedding, but I am more than willing to go and see if it means protecting my family. Edit. I think I accidentally deleted the paragraph where I mentioned this, but we did press charges. We took Luke to the pediatrician the next day and gathered every piece of evidence we had. Not only did we have pictures of Luke's face, but by some miraculous strike of luck, we also had nanny cam footage. Some commenters were right to assume that my SM hadn't been invited to our house, but my dad hasn't really gone anywhere without her in years, so we took precautions. We didn't expect her to actually do anything this awful, but we've never trusted her with the kids. The physical attack happened off camera, but there is some footage of her screaming and Luke crying before and after the event. She now has a child abuse charge on her rap sheet. We wouldn't let her get away with this. Edit 2. There is a lot of additional info I want to add. I'll try to respond to at least some of the comments. I did not expect the amount I've gotten so far, but all I'll add for now is that Luke is okay. The visit to the pediatrician happened the day after. He already had a counselor. Jane was pretty traumatized when her dad and stepmom died and was worried it would rub off on him, and will continue treatment. We've been hugging and pampering him a little more than usual too. He's still upset but is already doing much better. Update 1. I want to thank everybody who took the time to read and or comment on my previous post. It's been a tough week, but it's always great to know that people care. I haven't been able to reply to every comment, but I will try to address some in this update. This might get a little long. I'll start off by saying that me and Jane are going NC with my dad and SM. We haven't really spoken to either of them since the incident, and I don't plan on being the one to reach out. Any communication between us is being handled by my younger sister. She's completely on our side but will remain in low contact for the time being. I've decided to adopt Jane's way of dealing with people she cares about, forgive what's apologized for, but never forget. Basically, if Dad or SM ever truly understand what they did wrong and sincerely apologize, we're willing to forgive them, even if begrudgingly so. But we will never ignore or let them forget what they did to our family, and for the time being, either of them will be allowed near Luke, our baby, and any other kids we may have in the future, even if we do forgive them. As for the rest of my family, I read a lot of comments suggesting that I post pictures of Luke's face as well as the nanny cam footage. I'm not very active on social media, but even if I was, I'm not comfortable exposing my injured preschooler like that, especially given that nothing on the internet ever truly goes away. I also decided not to share the pictures with my family unless truly necessary. I should probably mention that while my family adores my dad, most of them aren't very fond of SM. She had 2 failed marriages prior to meeting my father, the first of which resulted in my stepbrother, and he cheated on his then-girlfriend to be with her. My family loved that girlfriend and disliked SM right away. Not only has she been controlling and manipulative since the beginning, she's also tried to force her way into the family matriarch role by any means possible. Taking over planning duties for every family event was her favorite way to do it because of all the attention and compliments that come with it. The main reason why I hated these parties growing up was because she'd always find a way to make everything about her, including Christmas and mine and my sister's birthdays. The rest of the family felt neutral about it, but they never liked her. With Luke, it was different. Most of my relatives didn't meet him until COVID restrictions got looser, and by then, he was 2 years old. He's a bright and genuinely lovable kid, and there weren't really any other small children in the family, so everyone immediately started cooing over him. The way I see it, SM got upset that Jane and Luke were accepted by my family so easily compared to her experience, and that's why she resents them both. But I can't confirm that. She was also mad that, aside from not being the planner, she would have absolutely no involvement in the wedding party. She tried to pressure us into letting her officially appreciate one of Jane's best friends, who was offered that role a year ago, making stepbrother my best man. He wasn't interested, and I'd already gotten my best friend or asked her sister's daughter to be our flower girl. We'd promised Jane's 3-year-old niece, also her sister's daughter, is 15 and doesn't know us. She also tried to convince us to let my dad walk Jane down the aisle since her father's gone, but her eldest brother, the BIL I mentioned in the first post, had already been enlisted. SM was disappointed that my family wasn't as involved in the wedding as Jane's and kept making comments about how that would never happen if we put her in charge. All of that being said, there's nothing that can excuse being that awful to a child, especially if it really is the petty jealousy that I suspect because I haven't spoken with my father. My sister has been keeping me updated on what he's been up to. As I found out through her, The story my dad and SM told the rest of the family completely erases Luke's injury and the abuse charges. It insinuates that me and Jane banned them because we got annoyed with SM and decided to take it out on my dad as well. Most people already disliked SM. Explaining what actually happened that night wasn't hard, and most of the relatives that I actually wanted at the wedding have apologized and are berating my dad as well. The people that didn't believe us, as well as those saying we overreacted, have been told they are not welcome in our home anymore. Those are mostly people from my dad's generation, so I can't say I'm surprised, but the realization that they are so biased, they're willing to protect a woman they hate after she hurt a child just to make my dad happy, has reassured me that I don't need any of them in my life. Stepbrother is still in denial. He refuses to believe his mother could hurt a child, even with all the evidence we have. I have to admit I understand. I love my mom too, but that doesn't mean I'd excuse his obliviousness, so he's banned too. It sucks because we were close growing up, but I don't regret it. Besides, Jane has 3 other siblings besides Luke, the older Bill, a twin brother, and a younger sister, and I'm closer to them than I ever was to him. Speaking of Jane's family, they're all furious over what happened and have been extremely supportive of us. Jane's maternal family basically adopted Luke after she got custody of him and have called frequently to make sure he's okay. We did manage to save some money with everybody we uninvited and have decided to use it to help Jane's cousin. She lives in a different country and was previously unable to come to the wedding, so we're paying for her plane ticket. Luke has gotten much better and is almost completely back to being the sunny child he's always been. The split lip was shallow. It's healing slowly but didn't require stitches. We sat him down a few days ago and explained that my dad and stepmonster wouldn't be around anymore. He really liked my dad but understands that he and SM are attached at the hip. He's clearly scared of her, but we're doing our best to make him feel safe. Me and Jane have reassured him that he is family, we love him, and no one will ever change that. I'm not too worried about Dad or SM trying to show up at the wedding, but we've alerted the venue and given them pictures just in case they try anything. Better safe than sorry. Some people brought attention to the fact that SM is a hypocrite for saying Luke isn't family. I agree for obvious reasons. Her main excuse for pretty much everything she does is that she doesn't feel like my family welcomes her. Dad has been guilting me to take part in everything she plans by reminding us of that for as long as I can remember. The way he continues to make excuses for her without realizing this is basically a case of the pot calling the kettle black, except Luke actually is family, is what has made me accept that while I will always love my dad, it's not healthy or safe for me and my family to be around him anymore. It hurts to know my son won't have his only remaining biological grandfather in his life, but he has 2 amazing step-grandpas to make up for it. For now, I'm sad but satisfied with how things have turned out. I don't like to complain about my life. It's a mess but a beautiful one. I love my fiancé, I love my kids, and I'm lucky enough to love my job. We're happy. I'm not letting anyone ruin that. To whoever was annoyed at my censorship when posting on AITA, it didn't work out. Jane suggested I make the writing less explicit. I'm not used to Reddit yet, so I might have overdone it a little bit. I hope this is my last update on this story, but I'll keep you posted again. Thank you for all your love and support. Best wishes to all of you. Relevant comments from OP. The only reason why I know that this is the first time she's hit him is because this was the first and last time she was with the kids unsupervised. Me and Jane were around every previous time she saw Luke. She didn't want my dad to babysit him, and we'd only asked him to on a few occasions before. My sister was still living with them at the time and has assured me that Luke was never out of her sight. I know and trust my sister enough to believe her. First time or not, I will not give her a second chance. She'll never hurt either of my kids again. OP went told to secure passwords with all vendors. We've actually had passwords with the vendors since day one. Some of the earlier ones we met actually recommended us to do it. SM did contact our planner a while back saying she had our approval to talk to our vendors. We didn't let her, And we got a bit more strict with passwords after that comment. So is SM serving any jail time? If she attacked a child, then you guys press charges. I would imagine she would have to be processed and eventually serve some time for her crime. OOP, we hope so. We're setting up a date for the arraignment. Commenter, start a file for SM, keep any and all texts, voicemails, and attempts of her communicating. Do the same with anyone who has taken her side, because she could escalate, and you may need that info. Those people are flying monkeys, and she sent them to not only plead her case but report back to her the things you may have told them so she can continue to play her victim card. You were great to have the nanny cam but should also make sure to notify his daycare or school that she is not to be given info or access to him. Get cameras that have audio just in case she shows up at your house and password protect all of your wedding vendors. Let them know not to give her any info and to notify you if she tries. Your dad may be harmless, but she's not. OP, that second advice is something we've been pretty occupied with. Actually, this past week has been mostly about the kids and collecting evidence, but I'll definitely check out the J and Mill sub. Commenter, did you say that if your father and stepmother apologize, you will allow them at your wedding? I wasn't quite sure what you were saying. OOP, absolutely not. My father and SM are not welcome at the wedding, no matter the circumstances. They could offer me an island, and I'd still refuse to let them come back into our lives. Right now, I only plan to give anything far off in the future, and only if they apologize sincerely. Even then, they will have no access to the kids for years after that. Knowing SM, I highly doubt she'll ever feel sorry for what she did, so we're not counting on it. Anyway, update 2, I'll start off by probably disappointing a lot of people. We're coming to terms with the fact that it's unlikely SM will get anything more than a slap on the wrist. Me and Jane are discussing our next move with our lawyer, but we're still not sure how we're going to move forward. It's too early to tell anyway, so we're trying not to get ahead of ourselves any more than we already have. However, I'm relieved to announce that we're getting started on the process for a restraining order against SM. We're using the same evidence we gathered the week following the incident, including the nanny cam footage and pictures of Luke, and we'll focus on that for the time being. I still haven't spoken to my father. My sister is still in LC but is seriously considering cutting ties with him because my sister is the only one on my side that still talks to him. My father keeps trying to ask her about me and whether I've calmed down yet. According to her, he's annoyed that half of his family refuses to talk to him, but still doesn't seem to accept why. I told my sister that she doesn't need to keep playing messenger pigeon between me and our father. I never asked her to do it, and it's clearly taking a toll on her, but she insists she'll stop when it feels right. By the way, there's absolutely no doubt whether SM attacked Luke. Not only did Luke say at the moment we got home, but that was also confirmed by my father in a failed attempt to defend her behavior. He never tried to hide it from us. That and the fact that he gave Luke an ice bag is literally the only positive thing I can say about his actions. SM was too busy screaming about how much of a whining brat Luke was being to deny it. To those who guessed, SM is younger than my dad. You'd get an invisible cookie. She's also 5 years younger than his previous girlfriend. They got together when I was around 15. Also, my stepbrother is only a month older than me. She turns 50 later this year. Had him at 21, married his father a year later. Both our kids are doing mostly okay. Luke's back to running around the house in his Superman costume whenever he doesn't have anything better to do. He did have a few nightmares this past week, and has asked to sleep on our bed twice. We don't mention my father around him, and he's still seeing his counselor. Our 14-month-old son has learned 2 new words, hi and bye, and Luke is trying to teach him to say his name. Jane's sister, who moved away for college, is coming over for a couple of days to celebrate her 21st birthday later this month. Luke's excited to see her, and Jane's excited to get drunk with her. Can't say I blame her. We're hoping her presence will cheer us all up. I'm not doing so good, and neither is Jane. She's usually the kind of person who tries to keep her negative emotions to herself, but she cried herself to sleep almost every night the week it happened. It breaks my heart to see her like that, and I can't help but feel like this is my fault. There's a part of me trying to tell myself I had no way of knowing SM would do anything like that, but that doesn't really change anything. I allowed my father near my kids unsupervised, even though I knew she'd probably tag along. This is the guiltiest I've ever felt, and I don't think I'll ever forgive myself. Jane has been improving lately, and is trying to convince me to see a therapist. I've never really done that before, apart from a psychiatrist when I was younger, but now feels like a good time to give it a try. I was surprised by a few messages this week from people telling me to forgive my father and SM, as well as re-invite them to the wedding. That's not happening. In fact, I'm not willing to ever forgive SM. My dad has now degraded to a huge maybe, but I will never understand or forget what she did. Also, though the wedding is the last thing on our minds right now, we're not postponing it. We considered rescheduling, but the date we'd settled on is pretty much the only one that works for our guests. We have passwords with all our vendors and gave them all clear instructions not to talk to anyone but us. Jane's family is bigger and closer to each other, which is why they're more involved in the wedding than mine, but I do have family participating. My sister is one of the bridesmaids, 2 of my cousins are groomsmen, and my mom is walking down the aisle with the wedding party. Going through all of this with Jane has made me understand even more just how much I love this woman. I couldn't ask for a better partner to start a family with, and I have no idea what I'd do without her. This didn't tear us apart, and I couldn't be more thankful. I probably won't make any more updates until after the wedding unless something big happens in the meantime. As always, best wishes to all of you. Update 3. I didn't plan on updating again before the wedding, but something pretty huge happened. The good news is we got the RRO. The bad news is me and Jane had to see both SM and my father at the court hearing. This was our first time seeing them since we kicked them out of our house over a month ago, and neither of us were looking forward to it. We left the kids with Jane's brother and Sil, so at least Luke didn't have to see them. The hearing itself went a lot quicker than I expected. I'll give credit where it's due. My father was, at the very least, smart enough to understand there was no way they were winning this. There was a lot of evidence against them. Not only did we have the nanny cam footage, Luke's pictures, and medical record, but my sister had also gathered every text and email SM had sent her and the family about what happened. SM hates speaking on the phone, so there were a lot of those. They didn't even bother to get an attorney for the hearing. The judge granted us a protection order against SM. She's not allowed within 500 feet of us or our property anymore. We're changing all our locks this week, and I'm thinking about changing my phone number as well. I have to admit, the moment we left the courthouse was the safest I'd felt since this whole ordeal started. Jane was close to tearing up with joy when we got to the car. We picked up the kids and went to McDonald's with Bill and his family to celebrate. Hours later, my father called me. The order doesn't extend to him, so he can still do that. Jane and the kids were in bed, so I answered. I didn't expect him to change his mind and apologize all of a sudden, but decided to give him one last chance. He tried to start some awkward small talk, but I told him to get to the point. He asked me if the order was truly necessary. I stated very clearly that SM was never coming near Jane or my children again, and that I was glad I had an RO to formalize that. Every excuse he had for SM was pretty easy to shut down, but she only hit him once? Yep, and that's enough for me. The kids need their grandma. She's not their grandma. Mom is. She's my wife. You need to respect her. She attacked Luke. She disrespected my family in my own house. I don't owe her anything, least of all my respect. He then went on a rant about family, how much of a godsend SM was, and everything she had done for me and my sister since she came into our lives. I replied by listing every time I could remember about her lying, overstepping a boundary, or acting unhinged around me, my family, or my sister. I brought up both my adult life and my youth. Examples included her attempts to hijack most of our milestones. Recently, our wedding plans, our son's birth, Jane's baby shower, and my sister's college graduation. Her obsession with the idea of a perfect family and her disgusting attitude towards Luke. I also made sure to mention her habits of going through mine and my sister's stuff when we were younger. It's trivial compared to everything else, but this behavior went on until my sister moved out of their house only 3 months ago. We're pretty sure she found out about Jane's wedding dress appointments by reading my sister's planner while she wasn't home, for instance. Some of the memories I mentioned are long and hard to explain, but they did cement the fact that SM means nothing to me. He tried to go with the whole "she doesn't feel included" excuse again, but I shut him up. I said he'd had the opportunity to protect his grandchildren but had chosen his monster of a wife instead, and that's enough for me to want nothing to do with him. I hung up without saying goodbye. My sister told me he called her afterward, and she told him she was going NC with him as well. I think we're both starting to accept our father won't change. It sucks, but he's made his priorities clear, and his children and grandkids aren't among them. For now, that's it. Now that they're fresh in my mind, I'm thinking about sharing some of the stories I reminded my father of, but that's going to take a while. Until then, as always, best wishes to all of you. Relevant comments. Commenter. But she only hit him once. Would have ended the phone call for me. OP. I almost hung up on him when he said that. The only reason I didn't was because I knew I wasn't going to talk to him again anytime soon, and I still had a lot to say. Commenter. I am curious how your stepbrother is handling all of this. Like, the RO is something you can't just push away. A judge stated that what his mother did was so terrible she needed to stay away from those children. It just feels like something you can't stick your head in the sand and claim that you could never believe that your mother could hurt someone like that. OP. I haven't spoken to him since days before the RO, and he hasn't tried to contact me or my sister. He was still in denial last time we talked but seemed a bit doubtful, tbh. I think he's the only one who isn't a complete lost cause and still has a slight chance of coming around. He's still banned, but I might be willing to talk to him about this whole thing. Commenter. Holy hell. If you are comfortable sharing, I know many of us would want to hear those hijacking stories. Hope the kids don't have too terribly long an impact on their life from this, especially the preschooler. OP. Luke hasn't mentioned her in a while. I don't doubt he was affected by this, but I think he understands everything is okay now. Our baby is barely a year old, and if it's up to me, he won't even know she exists until he's grown. I'll definitely share some of the stories as soon as I can bring myself to write them down. Commenter. It's crazy how the court gave your dad a chance not to give him the protection order, and you gave him a chance to explain on the phone, and he still managed to screw up. You guys gave so many chances, and your dad fails to see that SM is a bad person. Your dad doesn't seem like he's going to change, and until he does somehow, stop giving him more chances. OP, that was his last chance, and he blew it. If he ever comes around, and that's a big if, it'll still take me a long time to allow him back into our lives. Update 4. After being engaged for over 2 years, me and Jane finally got married last Saturday. We're still getting used to calling each other husband and wife, but we'll get there, hopefully. The wedding was awesome, the kids had fun, our extended families finally met, and we danced so much I could barely stand the next day. Luke took his ring bearer duty seriously, and held my son's hand as they walked down the aisle. Besides my aunt getting shit-faced and being let out on a wheelchair, which I already thought would happen anyway, everything went according to plan. It's been 4 months since we got the RO against SM. Things have been mostly quiet, and I wouldn't have it any other way, except completely quiet, but we can't always get what we want. I never really worried about SM showing up at the wedding, especially after the RO. It's literally illegal for her to come close to us, and we made it very clear that if she tried, we'd call the cops right away. My friends still warned me to take safety measures, most of which I did, SM didn't show up, of course, but I'm a strong believer that any money spent on security is well spent, so no regrets on that end. My stepbrother and I wished each other happy birthdays, and he also texted Jane on hers back in June. That's the only contact we've had during these months. He knows that the door is still open if he wants to apologize. My dad has given up on trying to reach me. We haven't spoken since April. He's still trying to talk to my sister for some reason, but she's ignoring him. A few days after she went in with him, they had a huge fight over the phone about SM's treatment of us over the years. Insults were thrown, sore subjects were brought up, and most importantly, my father took SM's side on almost everything. My sister called me crying afterward. I wanted to call him and yell at him, but she told me not to. She's doing okay now. She hasn't blocked him but doesn't take his calls or answer his texts. She's only gotten 3, a weak apology, one on my birthday back in May, and a long rant after either of us wished him a happy Father's Day. After all, despite our differences, he's still our father. He's not wrong. I love my father, and I always will, but I can't be around him anymore. While I've closed that door, I'm not locking it just yet. He knows what he needs to do if he wants his family back. I don't think he'll do it, but if there's the slightest chance he might, I'll consider opening the door an inch or two. This is my wife's suggestion. I'm a lot less optimistic than she is, but maybe it's important to hold on to that hope. She hasn't forgiven him, though, or SM. Jane has always been very protective of Luke, so it was no surprise that this disaster shook her. A part of me was scared she'd blame me, but she called me a dumbass when I told her that. I've been in therapy for a few months, and it's helped a lot more than I thought it would. I've realized SM's behavior around me growing up was a lot worse than I always thought, and it's great to finally be able to get my feelings off my chest. Right now, I'm more than happy. I just married the most amazing woman ever, and I have the family I always dreamed of. None of us are perfect, but I never thought life would be this great to me. I'll stick around. Reddit is a lot more than I expected, but I can sleep peacefully now, so it's safe to say this will be my last update on this. Thank you all for the kindness and advice you gave me these months. I could have never expected the support I got from you guys, and I can't begin to describe how helpful it was. Seriously, thank you all. Edit, 3 days later. Okay, I updated too soon. I didn't want to write another post, so I'll just add this here. My stepbrother called me earlier today. Apparently, he and SM had a fight, and he wants to meet up. I agreed, as long as it was just the two of us. We're meeting up for coffee on Wednesday. I have no idea what to expect, but even if he does apologize, I need to know he understands how and why he let us down. New update. Hey guys, I've been away from Reddit for a few months due to some stuff at work, but a lot of people have been messaging me about my stepbrother, so I want to give you a small update. I've been busy and tired these days, so I might gloss over some details. Feel free to ask me anything. I first met my stepbrother for coffee back in August. He'd had a fight with SM, and the RO was brought up. She'd lied to him about some details, accusing Luke of picking on my baby, bad-mouthing Jane, and more. But this time, he managed to force her to tell him the truth. My stepbrother started to reevaluate his relationship with his mother after talking to his therapist and his friends about it, as well as the way she'd raised him. He finally accepted I wasn't exaggerating about what she did to Luke. He wanted to talk to me back in June, but didn't want to distract me and Jane from the wedding. Me and my stepbrother spent the last 4 months working on rebuilding our relationship. We've been meeting for coffee or lunch and discussing his mother and what she did to our lives and my kids. Jane started joining us in October, and the kids saw him again for the first time 2 weeks ago. Things were awkward between us for a while, but we're good now. He's also making amends with my sister. In early November, he completely cut contact with SM. Jane and the kids are doing amazing. Luke turned 5 in September, and our baby will be 2 in early February. We're spending the holidays with Jane's family in Brazil, while my stepbrother stays with his girlfriend. Things are great. That's all. I'm signing off for now. I'll let you know if anything happens. Happy holidays, everyone. Best wishes to all of you. Am I the A** for getting upset with my wife for secretly having an abortion after I clearly stated I didn't want children? I have been happily married to my wife Clara for around 3 years now. I love this woman to pieces. I don't want to get sentimental, but she truly is my other half, and I cannot see myself with another woman, even now. Before we got married, I made my stance on children clear. I didn't want any. She agreed at the moment, and I thought that was that. About 1.5 years into our marriage, she brings up the question of children again. She asks me if I want kids. I say no, I don't. She hums, and we go back to doing what we did before. It wasn't a conversation so much as it was an odd question this time around, but I didn't think anything of it. We had a very robust sex life, but always took the necessary precautions. She has the implant, and I use a condom around 90% of the time, so I wasn't worried. Her bookshelf recently broke, so I ordered a new one. I had wanted to build it as a surprise and put her books up on it for when she came home. While going through them, I noticed an old journal of hers. I immediately smiled and flipped through it. When we were in college, she'd carry it around. It was a future planning notebook of sorts. If she wanted something in life, she'd draw out exactly what she envisioned, at clip-ins, the whole 9 yards, manifestation, if you will. She had shown me it in college after declaring that she wanted to pursue her doctorate, and I remember being stunned at the attention to detail. I mean, we were only sophomores, and she knew exactly what she wanted to do, what she wanted to study, and where she would take herself. It made me feel out of depth. I liked it. Anyway, I flipped through the journal, reminiscing about the past. I hadn't expected there to be any new entries, at least not anything recent that I hadn't experienced with her. But as I opened it up, I saw something I never thought I'd see. It was a section dedicated to pregnancy and baby prep. She had researched prenatal vitamins, OBG in our area, had images of cradles, etc. It was only 2 pages, but I remember feeling so sick in my head. There was only one reason she'd put that in a journal like this: she wanted kids. Naturally, I was torn up. I kept telling myself I'd been upfront about what I wanted, and if she hadn't, that was her fault. But the thought that she'd secretly been suffering because of me, that she was holding herself back from the life she wanted to please me, I couldn't stand it. I confronted her about it as soon as we came home, and I found out the situation was a lot worse than I thought. Clara did indeed want kids but claimed she wanted our relationship more and was okay with compromise. I asked her 1,000,000 times if she was sure. I really wanted her to be honest, and not feel like she had to hold anything back. She insisted that not having children wasn't a deal breaker for her, but I kept pushing. I couldn't understand why she'd put something that wasn't that important to her in that journal. In the midst of our conversation, she dropped the bomb. She told me she had an abortion 1.5 years ago. Offered up the information like I should have been relieved, like it was the proof she needed to convince me that she meant what she had said about children not being a deal breaker. I can't describe what I felt at that moment, what I'm still feeling. What I can say is that I have never blown up at my wife the way I did that night. I didn't put my hands on her. I would never put my hands on her, but it was not a pretty exchange. I just remember feeling hurt that she hadn't consulted me on such an important decision, that she went and had such a life-altering procedure without discussing it with me, that I didn't even notice that it happened? I mean, those things have side effects, right? She would have been bedridden for days afterwards in physical and emotional pain. How could I not have seen the signs? I'm still beating myself up about it. I remember her asking me if I wanted kids, but nothing about her emotional state for the rest of that week when she would have had the procedure done. How much can I really claim to care about her? I don't want children, I still don't, but I'd rather chew my left arm off than make her have an abortion, even more so now after she's told me she isn't really against having kids the way I am. I'd have raised a kid if it meant she didn't need to go through something so drastic. I've been staying with my sister for the last week and a half. I needed space to think, so I left. I want to see her to ask if she's okay, but I don't know what to do or say. I'm still unbelievably angry at her, and at myself. I don't want to yell at her again. I think the first time around scared her pretty badly, and I don't want to repeat that. My sister thinks I'm being petty, punishing my wife for something I would have agreed with regardless, but I wouldn't have agreed. I don't know. Relevant comments. OP on not considering or prioritizing his wife's preferences when she is prioritizing his decisions. Comment 1. OP to clarify. I never once said this. If that's how my post came across, let me clear it up. If she came to me and asked to start trying for a kid, in other words, to go off birth control and stop using condoms, my answer would be no. I've always been firm in that. She's never pushed the issue, but no amount of begging would entice me to plan to have a child. Having an unplanned child, on the other hand, wasn't something we discussed. Obviously, hindsight is 20/20, but that doesn't help much here. Update. I woke up to a lot of comments and outright hate, so I thought I'd clear a few things up. A lot of you were concerned about me snooping in Clara's journal. I met this woman when I was 6 years old. We had experienced over half of what she had written down in that notebook together. She's been letting me read her entries routinely since college, though I would read them more often back then. Like I said, I found her decisiveness incredibly attractive. But college was 6-7 years ago, and times have changed. I'm not sure if she has other journals, but her use of this specific one died down as we got older, and so did my readership. I felt no qualms about picking it up and reading it that day because, quite frankly, I never have. This was not the first time I read that journal without her present, as I've been given express permission to do so. It was meant to be a quick trip down memory lane. I had no idea she had added more things, let alone pregnancy planning. She keeps all her old journals, sketchbooks, etc., in the same area, and this book was in that pile. You should have gotten a vasectomy. I'm not discussing my reasons for not wanting kids. But I did discuss them thoroughly with Clara before we got married. Our reasons for not wanting children were very similar based on that initial conversation, but I guess hers wavered as time went on. How that turned me into an evil dictator that refused to hear her opinions out, I'll never understand, but I guess that's Reddit for you. I didn't get a vasectomy because I'm not sure that I won't want kids 10 to 15 years down the line. I am positive I don't want them at the current moment, but I'm 27, opinions and circumstances change. Regardless of its reversibility, it's marketed as a permanent surgery. Vasectomies are covered by my health insurance, but reversals are not. It simply made no sense to invest in something I wasn't sure could be undone if I didn't want it anymore. Not when Clara and I were taking the necessary precautions to avoid pregnancy. Otherwise, she got on birth control way before we started having sex. I had absolutely nothing to do with that decision. As far as I know, she's quite happy with it. The chances of pregnancy with the implant are less than 1%, even less when using condoms as well. We talked about the decision together and ultimately decided a vasectomy wasn't the right choice. Someone actually went as far as to say that because I didn't get my vasectomy, an unexpected pregnancy was inevitable. A 0.5% chance and inevitable are two vastly different things. You guys do realize that vasectomies aren't 100% effective either, right? Unless you're pushing for abstinence, I really don't want to hear it. We also don't go raw unless we both agree to it, which I would never pressure her to do. You verbally abused her. Clara and I both grew up in shitty homes. Our parents yelled and were extremely combative. After growing up in that environment, we agreed to avoid that kind of behavior in our relationship, and we do our best to keep to that. I have never raised my voice at her before this argument. I'm more on the timid side, so I imagine it was a shock for her to see me so angry. She also just doesn't do well with yelling in general. It wasn't my words so much as it was my tone. Should I have raised my voice? No, but I'm not an infallible robot. My comment about not putting my hands on her was to draw conclusions away from physical violence. Clearly, it wasn't taken that way and had the opposite effect. The exchange was heated on both sides. Lots of things were said. It was the worst disagreement we have ever had, and we have been together for close to a decade, close friends for even longer. That being said, I still think it was on the tamer side of the overall spectrum. Relative to other people, that spectrum might be a bit skewed due to my childhood, but take that as you will. You're a dick for leaving her for a week and a half. To be fully clear, this was a mutually respected decision. I told her I needed space to think. She suggested I take it outside the house. Granted, she wasn't the happiest when she said it, but we had just finished a heated argument. We texted the entire time I was at my sister's place. Very dull and mundane conversation, mostly pleasantries. But I didn't just abandon her. We weren't speaking audibly, but we were in contact. I don't know how else to phrase that. Things were just tense and very different from our usual level of interaction. Everything was surface level. We would check to make sure the other ate, showered, whatever else, but that was it. There was no continuation of our discussion while we were apart. Both taking the time to make sure we were in the right headspace to have a proper conversation, as is common for our relationship. It just took me a bit longer to get there. She wouldn't have been bettered in. Abortions aren't that deep. I'll concede to the physical aspect of this. I've often heard them described as a bad period, and a lot of the women in my life tend to tap out during their monthlies, which is what I based my assumption on. I accept that it was incorrect, though I'm not sure if I should, because half of you agreed with my take in the post, condemning me for not noticing, and the other half told me I was overreacting. Again, I guess that's Reddit for you. More importantly, I will not agree on the general take on the emotional aspect. At the time, I still did not believe Clara genuinely wanted to have an abortion. After hearing her updated stance on having kids, I imagined her feelings would be on par with someone who experienced a miscarriage rather than an abortion. Because of this, I still do. The only thing that would change my mind at this point is Clara herself. You should go to couples counseling and seek therapy individually. We are both in different types of talk therapy and have been for several years. I'm not sure how helpful couples therapy would be on top of that, but I'm not opposed to it. Asking if you wanted kids was enough. She doesn't owe you anything. Reading through the comments, many of you thought this, and we're simply going to have to disagree. As the father of the child, the decision to abort should not have been made without my clear and explicit knowledge that she was pregnant. We weren't separated at the time, nor did I cheat, and contrary to popular belief, I'm not abusive. I deserve to know. I won't apologize for expecting my wife to consult me on family planning decisions. I'd do the same for her 10 times over if roles were reversed. Call it controlling, I really don't care. Asking if I want kids is a completely different discussion than terminating a pregnancy. I am on my way home now and will update if the situation changes, likely sometime this week. I'd ask for well wishes, but I think it's clear none of you are rooting in my favor. Hell, edit, took out the numbers to prevent text from looking long and blocky. Final update. Before I got into where Clara and I are now, a lot of you had some misconceptions concerning things like me reading Clara's journal, vasectomies, and other things. I made a separate post addressing those. Read it, don't whatever. I came home the morning following my initial post, and Clara and I had a very long conversation. We both apologized for letting the previous conversation get out of hand and acting out of character. I also explained why I left in the first place, and apologized for raising my voice. She's especially sensitive to that kind of thing, so I addressed it first. She forgave me and said as long as we could keep things calm this time around, it would be okay. She was more interested in finding out what I was so deep in thought about that I was gone for so long. Again, we do take breaks from conflicts from time to time and revisit them when we're calmer, though this was the first one where I physically removed myself from her. Proximity. I told her how I initially felt after reading her journal entry. I hadn't been mad then. Part of me was confused. We had agreed on no kids before getting married, after all. The other half was riddled with anxiety. Contrary to what you may all think, I adore Clara. She is quite honestly one of only good things this life has given me. I didn't want to lose her, but if she wanted kids badly enough to put them in her journal, I wasn't sure what that would mean for us. She downplayed the importance of the entry. In her view, not everything she puts into the journal is something she's genuinely hoping for. Some things are just nice to fantasize about, and not every fantasy is meant to be reality. I was honest. I told her that her words were hard to believe, given how meticulously she had written everything down and planned it out. The last thing I wanted was for her to harbor resentment over what her life could have been. She assured me that wasn't the case, but I'm still unsure. Talking about the abortion itself was hard on both of us. I wanted to know if she was in pain, what signs I had missed. I didn't really press for details on the procedure, but we talked a lot about how she felt afterward, why she hid it, and how she came to her decision. I just held her in my arms and listened. For the most part, it was gut-wrenching, to say the least. It turns out that the second time she had asked if I wanted kids occurred a month or two after she had already had the procedure done. She had asked because she was contemplating whether or not to tell me about it. I guess she had ultimately decided not to. She told me I was actually with her the day she took the pills. I remembered the day because she had been crying, and I wasn't sure why. When I asked, she cited cramps, so I got her a heating pad and laid down with her. Her periods have always been pretty hard on her, so I guess I didn't think much of it. In hindsight, I should have realized something was up because she hasn't had bad cramps in years. Still, I'm glad she didn't go through it completely alone. Much later that day, I asked her why she didn't come to me when she realized she was pregnant. In her eyes, she was protecting our relationship. She knows our circumstances, my reasons for not wanting kids, my stance on abortion. She didn't want to burden me with having to choose between the two, and so she made the choice herself. As hard as I try, I can't understand or accept her reasoning. Her decision to go through this alone, while meant to shield me, inadvertently communicated that she doesn't trust me to support her or handle the truth. All I understood is that she feels like she can't lean on me when she's in trouble, and if that's the case, I'm not sure why we're married. She's always been independent, but this is the first time I felt completely blindsided by not being included. I asked up and down if I'd given her a reason to doubt me, to doubt my commitment to her, if she felt I wasn't a reliable partner, etc. She said no, but that just makes all this harder to grasp. She said she was afraid saying anything would change how I viewed her, our relationship, but I'm having a hard time distinguishing insecurity, anxiety from reasonable doubt. I asked her if she knew I loved her, how much I care for her, the lengths I would go to make her happy, etc. She laughed a little and reminded me of a line from my wedding vows. We shared private vows before our ceremony, and I had said quite a bit. I was a little shocked that she remembered that portion at all, let alone word for word. We transitioned to talking about the promises we made to one another, and just times in our relationship where we had complete trust, faith in one another. It helped put us both in better moods and ended the night on a lighter note for both of us. We're doing okay at the moment, not quite where we were before but getting there. Everything's still incredibly raw, including our eyes. We both broke down 5 minutes into the conversation. Clara is against couples counseling right now. I'm ambivalent, as we're still working a couple of things out on our own. I'm not sure how helpful a third party asking what steps we're willing to take to improve trust and transparency will really be, but I'm open to anything at this point. We're not leaving one another, issues are not. We both think it's clear that there's still an abundance of love between us, and we don't want to throw that away. Some of you will be happy to know that Clara and I decided on a new rule for ourselves. Clara was a lot more upset about my leaving than she initially let on. From now on, the distance between the top and bottom floors of our home is all the space either of us are allowed to take. We need to cool our heads. If proximity really does become an issue, The max either of us are allowed to stay outside the house is 48 hours, so no more week-long stays at my sister's. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.